take adaptation out the side. As a film, right? If this wasn't based on a novel, nothing. As a film, would you say that this was a masterpiece? Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm with my boys Daniel and Hervé.
Hi.
Yo.
And welcome back to the Eye of the Storm podcast. We're going to get straight into it. Guys, is Dune a good adaptation? Who wants to go first?
So the thing that brought this up was that Dune's as we're recording this, Dune is part 2 is coming out next week. And I've read the books. The two of you haven't read the books. And in talking about this just off camera, I think it came out that we have very different perceptions of how good the movie actually is, the first part. And I think that has to do with how much background knowledge we brought into that story, into that movie. And that begs the question of, is Dune not just a good movie, but a good adaptation? And what even is a good adaptation? So what's your general answer for what makes an adaptation good or bad?
Well, personally for me, I think it's sorry about that, guys. Personally for me, I think it's when it's accurate to so basically I think it's when it's accurate but they add their own flavor to it that doesn't kind of like mess up the formula, if that makes sense. So it's obviously accurate to the actual story at hand, so whoever was developed from an actual game or novel, whatever. If it's actually accurate, for example, Last of Us, right? Last of Us received raving reviews, universally liked because of the accuracy, how people were pretty much commending the director, saying they didn't change much. They literally kept to, they kept the structure, they kept the story same as the game. And obviously, they added their little 2 cents here and there, but they pretty much kept the accuracy was important. So that's why I think when it comes to adaptation, I think the accuracy is very important. Like, do not damage or do not change something or do not try and fix something that's not broken. So personally for me, that is what a good adaptation will be presented as.
I think as well, just to like add to that as well, I feel like, especially with like, things like possibly Dune and like Star Wars and stuff like that, there were like kind of like set rules within the world and set like mythologies of like how things are meant to work in that universe. For example, like, I don't know, like just off the top of my head, like Star Wars with like, the lightsabers and like crystal, like the crystal, so and the sabers that they use to create the lightsabers and stuff like that. Like just like things like that are like important to kind of like the mythologies and how like the Force works and stuff like that, and some of the Force powers and stuff like that. Like keeping that accurate and grounded within what's been set before, I believe also sort of adds to making. Because those are things that like are important to people. Those are things that like kind of like draw people into the world and actually make people like care about the world and the world building that they're doing within it. So I feel like as long as you're being respectful to the rules and the mythologies that have been set, then that also like leads to good adaptations.
Well, sorry, just wanted to add something in as well. Speaking of Dune though, which is a bit confusing, right? It's because when I first watched it, I did mention this before. Like, I didn't really like it. Then I watched it again. I said, oh, I actually do like it. Now, so far, I like Dune, but I don't understand. Even though it's a good adaptation, I still don't understand the big hype around it. Like, people who have seen Dune 2, they're calling it the best movie they've ever seen. They're calling it a masterpiece. I'm like, okay, cool. Even they said that, right, they didn't say it was the best film in the world, the first Dune, but they did say this was a masterpiece. And when I was watching it, I said, okay, this must be fans who've actually read the novel, because I think fans who haven't read the novel and just going into this film not knowing what the hell it's about, I don't know if they have the same thought towards what other people have. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Because when I'm watching this Dune, I'm like, okay, cool, this is a good movie. But a masterpiece and the best film that's ever been created was a bit mad to me. So, yeah, it's this Dune is a bit mad. Even though Dune is a good adaptation, is it still the best film that's ever been made? Is it still this masterpiece? And why is it a masterpiece? But sorry, I'm not trying to kind of like.
No, I'm gonna jump in here as well, because like again, I was like similar to you. I watched it for the first time and I didn't really click with it. And I feel like the reason for that is I didn't watch it in cinema. I watched it at home. And like as I was watching at home, I was probably like on my phone and stuff like that, so not really paying attention to it. But actually, leading up to this conversation that we're having today, leading up to this video, I was like, let me give it a rewatch, and I can tell you, Dune is a masterpiece, and you can just tell, like I was, really paying attention to everything that they were like setting up, sort of all of the lore and like the world building that they were doing, sort of in the movie, even like the just like little details in there. And I'm trying to like remember off the top of my head. I don't have like set examples, but like just like you could just tell like that there was a lot of like thought. And again, like I've never read the book, so I don't know how much of like what's in the books is actually in the movie or whatever. But like as I was like watching it, I was like so intrigued by sort of just like everything to do with the world, like all of the mechanics of like how like different things worked and stuff like that. And it was just, and even like the political intrigue and stuff like that, and the like, is it the empire and the emperor and stuff like that? Just like everything about it just seemed amazing. And it'd be very interesting to obviously hear from Daniel like how much of Dune is something accurate to obviously what was like set in the books.
Okay, Daniel, sorry for what you claim, 'cause I know you're gonna come in with some strong facts and opinions, but just quickly. So, Hervey, your opinion now on Dune. Do you think you were
What
brainwashed?
do I think I was what?
Brainwashed. And
Oh,
what I mean by that is, the reason why I'm asking is because think about it, right? When the mass generally say this is so good,
mhm.
and then your opinion changes, right? Now, I'm not saying, oh, you're sheep. That's not what I'm saying. But
Oh,
generally, I feel like it's a subconscious thing, because sometimes when a lot of people say this is great, this is great, this is great. Now, some people might be like, I don't even want to watch it anymore because it's been overhyped. But most people generally be like, okay, you know what? This, they kind of like fall in line as well, and then they're kind of like brainwashed because the mass is saying this is great, and then you kind of fall in that as well. Because you question, yeah, sorry, that was my
no,
question.
genuinely, like away from what everyone is saying about Dune 2, like I genuinely like again, like despite what everyone was saying, if we wasn't doing this video, I probably wouldn't have rewatched Dune 1 for Dune 2. I probably would have gone and watched it and just like seen what it was about. But I genuinely feel like my experience of watching Dune for the first time, like sort of when I did first watch it, I was just not paying attention. I don't think I was paying attention to what I was watching. If I'm honest, I watched it at home. I was probably distracted, like looking at other things, maybe like replying to messages on whatever. So again, I wasn't really giving it the full attention. But when I rewatched it, I was like, okay, phones away. I'm going to see what's being delivered to me, and what was being delivered to me was excellent. Um, from like all of the characters. Like there's so many like fantastic characters in this in the movie. Like what's his name? What's the Timothy Chalamet's dad? What's he called?
Leto.
Leto. Fantastic character. His like general fantastic character. Even Jason Momoa's character. Like this is probably the type of Jason Momoa that I'd love to see in like other movies, in like his Aquaman stuff like that, because like he still had like that bantery side, but he also had like that seriousness and still about him as well. And it was like the perfect like kind of like balance of it in this movie. So
Yeah.
like all of the characters in this movie were A1, like everyone brought the A game to this movie. And then again, like I was saying, it was just like I was trying to like understand like the world building. So like I forget what's Timothy Chalamet's character again.
Paul,
Who? Sorry.
Paul Atreides.
Atreides, yeah. Paul Atreides, yeah. Like even like the stuff with like his mother and like sort of the whole like I forget everything. My memory is so bad in all of this, but like kind of like the whisperers that they have, like the ones that are able to use a voice and stuff like that. All of those like women that wear like the black cloaks and stuff like that. Everything about that was like very interesting, and like the lore behind it, and like how they like sort of like use the power to like influence different things, and like how they have like so much respect from like all of these like different like leaders of all these different like sort of like worlds or like armies and or like empires and stuff like that. But genuinely, like Dune is one of my favorite movies now.
So as somebody who has read the books, the most impressive thing for me about the adaptation is how the information that you need to know to understand the plot is conveyed. Because for decades and decades, everybody thought that Dune was unfilmable because there are so many really obscure and weird concepts in there that are really important to the story. They're not just window dressing, they really drive and inform the plot. To the point where when it was adapted for the first time in the 80s, they handed out a glossary that explained all the terms. And even then, they still added this several-minute exposition dump at the start, where somebody just explains the world and what the story is about before it properly starts. So, having seen it when you watched it the first time, myself, having talked to the both of you and having talked to other people who don't know the books and are seeing the movie for the first time, my impression is that a lot of the time people have no idea what's going on. They don't know who the people are, who these factions are, what the rules of the world are. But if you know the books, then you can see all the pieces there, and if you know what to look for, all the information is there all the information you need to understand is there. So comparing the first time you watched it with the second time you watched it, the way the information was conveyed, how did you experience that? The first time around, did you have any idea what was going on, why people were doing what they were doing, and how does that compare to the second time? So, for example, when Paul gets tested by the Bene Gesserit mother, with a box where he has to put his hand in the box, did you understand what was going on, and did you feel like the movie gave you enough information to understand what was going on?
Yeah, I mean, from my understanding of it is that, like, she had a son. I don't think she was meant to have a son. She was meant to like birth a daughter who was like meant to continue in their I never remember the names of anything, but like continue in like their traditions or whatever. And obviously,
it was supposed to be a girl, so that she would be married to the son of the Harkonnens, and then they together would have the psychic space messiah, and which is the ultimate goal of the Bene Gesserit are doing. But I'm talking specifically about, and Jessica disobeyed that and had a son instead, basically throwing off this entire centuries-long plan. But I'm specifically talking about the test where he has to put his hand in the box that's causing him pain. Yeah. Did you feel like that you understood what the purpose of that was? Because talking to other people who are new to the story, that is the first point where a lot of people jump off, essentially, where they don't understand what's going on. And if you know what to look for, all the information is there. But I think that might be the first hurdle, if you just in terms of being new to the story, in terms of understanding what's going on.
Well, isn't that bad storytelling? Because it's a thing where that's not going to be explained further in the stories. Yeah.
So in the books, that all of that is explained in internal monologue and context in the way that you can do in a novel. So there's kind of a question, because if you know what to look for and you just watch that scene again, all the information is there, or at least like the movie does in fact give you enough tools to understand what's going on. My question is, how does that scene play for somebody who doesn't already know what the point of that is?
So like my understanding of it was that like they've obviously been like looking for the chosen one for like sort of generation, and this like Paul wasn't meant to be the one, like like you said, she's deviated from the plan. So like, because this is not what they had envisioned for it, they're testing, and obviously like this, like he's got like the great power that they have as well, like she's teaching him like their ways and stuff like that, so he's got a lot of like power and stuff like that from that, as well as like the empire and stuff like that from his father. So it's just like, is it like a test of whether in like a difficult like circumstance he's able to like kind of like hold strong and continue kind of like what they're doing and like sort of kind of execute on their plans or something like that, and not like waver on or like not like kind of like give in or I'm trying to find the best way to explain this. He's essentially has like the strength and courage to like follow through and be like in like the plan, basically, if you're kind of getting what I'm saying.
Kind of. So she talks about how an animal will panic and just chew off its own leg if it's trapped in order to survive, and she says about how she wants to see if he's human. So it's obviously a very weird thing to say, right, without context. And what that basically means is that she uses the term human as somebody who doesn't act on instinct. It's kind of got close, but what it really means is that an animal acts on instinct and a human acts rationally. And so Paul's instincts are telling him to pull out his hand because he's in pain. The box is giving him pain, right? But rationally, he knows that the pain is not actually a danger to him. So she's testing if he's capable of overcoming his instincts and acting rationally, even in extreme pain.
Yeah.
And he has to he has to pass that test in order to be a candidate for their psychic space messiah. That is the purpose of that. Now, all the information for that is there in the movie. It's just really, you just blink and you miss it kind of thing. So that's one example, I think, where that scene, I think, is like all the information is there, but it's not present. Like it's kind of an important important concept in the story, and it's not terribly well established. Like, you really have to pay attention to every word, essentially, and you probably don't get it the first time you see it.
So when you say all the information is there, are you saying all the information is there for the people who've read the novel, so who are familiar with the story, or are you saying it's for everyone, as in even people who haven't read the story and they, if they're looking closely, they'll understand what's going on?
So the information is in the movie, in that scene, in the dialogue. It's my question was mostly about, is it too subtle for somebody to pick up? Because the purpose of the scene is the movie is supposed to stand on its own, right? If it only makes sense to people who have read the book, then it's not a very good adaptation. But if it gives you enough information in enough detail so that the audience can understand that, then the scene works, and otherwise it doesn't. And there's other things there too, like I think they don't ever explain what a mentad is, for example, and they don't show the navigator. So at this point, in the first, if you just look at how much story the Dune Part 1 covers, and you compare that to the 80s version, at this point in the story, we had met the Emperor, we had met the navigators, we had actually seen one, and we had gotten a scene explaining what a mentad is and why what their role in society is. And all of those three things have been cut from Dune Part 1 in order to make more space for other concepts. And I think that is a really interesting and effective choice, because it doesn't front load all the weird concepts at the start. So all of these are important concepts, and we'll see next week if all of those concepts are properly explained in Part 2. Mm-hmm. We know the Emperor appears, and we'll have to see about the other two bits. But one of the things that really impressed me when I watched Dune Part 1 is how deliberate and effective it is at communicating these concepts, and it knows what to put in, it knows what to put out, it knows what to dwell on and what not. But that was me, somebody who already knew the concepts. Mm-hmm. So did you have a feeling that it did its job well for somebody who is fresh to the story?
I believe so. I believe that's one comment that you did make last time we spoke, was about how they used exposition really well in this, and like every time that they were introducing like a new concept, it was done in like the right way, essentially. So like, for example, when the general is fighting Paul in the training room, and for the first time they put on like their visors and stuff like that, and he's like explaining the importance of always being ready for a fight, because when you're out there, like the people that you're going up against, you never know like when the fight's going to come to you and stuff like that. And it was like kind of like explaining like the danger that they're possibly going to be in, and obviously like the threat and stuff like that. And I felt like there was like multiple examples of that, so like that's just one that immediately jumps to mind. My memory is so bad, as you can probably tell, so like I kind of like forget. So if you can give like another example, Daniel, like of it in the movie. But I'm trying to remember another one.
What about the end scene? I think what was it? Is his name Paul, the main character?
Yeah.
Yeah, the fighting with him and from that clan. What's the clan that Zendaya is from?
The Fremen.
Yeah. That one seemed like question. I will ask a question about that, because for some reason, right? And I'm sure maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like that was a moment that was very iconic for people that have watched the novels. But for me, it just looked like a normal fight to the death scene that you would see in many other type of, sci-fi, fantasy type of films. So was there like huge significance in that, or, was that just a basic? Sorry to kind of like go adrift, but yeah, that's my question after Hervey.
So how I perceive that, and again, Dan, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but obviously he keeps having like multiple visions of like Zendaya's character. I don't know, I forget her name again, terrible memory. But he keeps having like multiple visions of her, and it's like either them like kind of like having like being a little bit playful. She's like kind of like showing them through something like the desert planet or whatever. And there's scenes of her like stabbing him, and he's like bleeding, showing blood or whatever like that. And it's like obviously like symbolism of like part of him needing to die for him to then become the Messiah, basically, or to become the chosen one. So the significance of that fight scene is that needs to happen for his past self to die, for him to then become what he needs to become moving forward. Is that correct, Daniel?
It's mostly about his acceptance into Fremen society, right? Because they basically don't do charity. Like one of the big things about their culture is that it's very utilitarian, and there's no luxuries, right? You can, because you cannot afford them when you live in the desert. So he has to prove that he can handle himself and that he won't be a burden on anybody, because nobody can afford to just support somebody who will not carry his own weight.
Mm.
And
I got that.
Hmm?
Sorry, carry on, Daniel. I was gonna say I got that. Like, that's what I first, when I watched, I was like, okay, yeah. So he just wants to, obviously he has to do this to be accepted. But when I was watching, I was thinking, surely there has to be like there's something that I'm missing, because it feels way more iconic than how I'm taking it in. And obviously the way that Herbie described it, I was like, okay, that would have made sense. But at the same time, Daniel, you're saying, pretty much it's just for acceptance. So that wasn't iconic then. The scene was just.
And I think it's also the first time one of his visions comes true, if I remember correctly. I think he sees himself. I remember exactly. I'm rereading the book at the moment, and I'm not at that point yet. But I think he sees himself in that fight, or something. I think, and basically that is the first time. Well, the second time. The first time his vision come true is when he actually meets Chani, because he has been dreaming about her. And then the second time is when he actually is in that, he actually wins that fight, and that's how he gains the acceptance of the Fremen, or at least that's how he starts on that path. So I think that is the biggest significance. What the two big significance, the two ways in which that is significant, I think.
Interesting. Because I mean, the reason I interpreted it like that is because when he was in that battle, he had the vision of the bloody hand in there, and I think he had a vision of that guy actually killing him in the fight as well. And then if I remember that correctly as well, so that's why I thought it was the significance of him needing to die. But yeah.
No, that is a good point. That's why when you said it, I was thinking, okay, that it has way more of an impact than him just doing that for acceptance into that clan or tribe or whatever term that they use to refer it themselves. But yeah. This is an interesting one, man, because I don't want to seem like the guy that's a hater. I'm not a hater at all. I did like this film. It's just the whole masterpiece, which is kind of mind-boggling me, because I'm just trying to understand what's the difference between this in comparison to any other films like this. When I say like this, I mean the whole genre. But it'll be interesting. I think I have to watch it again, because I'll be honest with you, I watched it very long ago, and I'm definitely gonna watch it again before I watch Dune 2 next week. So yeah. Okay, so what would you say I should look for?
Actually stick the landing, and whether they can bring the whole story together. But I think they're on the first half is an excellent start. There's a couple of other ways that they change the source material. So one of them is that Kynes, the planetologist, in the movie is a Fremen, and who works for the Imperium. And in the book, he's an Imperial who formerly works for the Imperials, but has been long enough on Dune to have essentially become one of the Fremen. So in both cases, the character has a foot in both worlds. And in the book, he's male. In the movie, a character as a woman. So the character has. So that's one of the things they changed, which I think doesn't really matter. But I think changing the character's background is kind of important, because it changes the context in which this character acts, right? Because if the character is a Fremen who pretends to work for the Imperials, that's a different character than an Imperial who has adapted, who has been with the Fremen for long enough to have become one of them, right? So in terms of the plot mechanics, it maybe doesn't make a huge difference, but I think in terms of who that character is, it makes a big difference. And then they also play down the ecology angle a lot. So did you get the theme of ecology and of environments shaping people from watching Dune Part 1?
No.
So the way it appears in the books is that basically, so ecology is a huge factor in the books, to the point where people call it ecological science fiction. So the Fremen are completely shaped by how they live, by their environment, right? The harshness of the environment, the lack of water, things like that. But there's also this idea of the ecological system of Dune creating the spice, and the spice drives everything. So if you change anything about Dune, it stops working, and it stops being that same story in the same place. And this idea of people being shaped by their environments appears in the Fremen, and it also appears in the elite troops that the Harkonnens use, because they come from this harsh prison planet. that, like Dune, also breeds very tough people and therefore good warriors. And that is something, if they go on in the story, this is something that will become more apparent. But this whole idea that people are shaped by their environment. So that is something that's huge in the story, and that really drives how factions, especially rather than individual characters, act. And I think that is something that's really been underplayed in the movie so far. To the point where you didn't pick up on it at all, right? That people are shaped by their environments, and that basically dictates how they interact with each other, right?
No, I mean I understand it on like the desert planet, because I think we spend most of the movie on the desert planet, and obviously you can understand like how I have to like adapt to it and sort of like the different systems they create and like all that stuff. So yeah, on that side of things, yeah, you can. It's not in your face about it though. It's not like something that was front of mind as I was watching it, to be honest.
And maybe that appears more in the second movie, but I think it doesn't appear really in the first half. So does that make it a worse adaptation if it changes a major theme of the story, or de-emphasizes it in favor of just getting the plot moving? Because I think we've said that in terms of conveying information and building the world, it does a really good job. But then thematically, it doesn't really do the same thing as the book. So does that make it a worse adaptation?
No, personally, like I say, if you add your own flavor and it works, then go for it. Yeah, that's all. Just in case you guys are just saying, yeah, that's all. So it worked for. I'm guessing it worked for you guys.
I feel like as well. Sorry, I feel like, again, like you were saying with Dune, it seems like there's like so many different like concepts and themes and ideas inside of it that for a filmmaker, it's almost like not impossible, but it's like very difficult to try to implement all of that in there. So maybe as a filmmaker, you've got to pick, some of the most important things that you want to convey in your film, and like maybe highlight that more. And obviously, like something like the ecology, like you mentioned there, is still important within the books and is maybe like shown a little bit in the movie, but it's not front and center, and it's not like extremely highlighted in the movie.
You know what, right? I got a question. Take the whole adaptation aside. By the way, firstly, shout out to the filmmaker, because the way obviously Daniel said in the beginning, people thought it was a film that just can't be adapted. So the fact that he adapted a film that people thought was impossible to do, shout out to you. But take adaptation out the side. As a film, right? If this wasn't based on a novel, nothing. As a film, would you say that this was a masterpiece?
I think so. If the second half delivers, then yes, I think it's one of the greatest science fiction movies ever made.
Why?
In terms of scale and complexity and sophistication, like I think science fiction on film has been in a really sorry state. It's either just action schlock or very by the numbers dystopian stuff. And for somebody to just make a space opera that feels alien and feels like we're getting a glimpse into this very complex and very alien but living world in which these epic stories are unfolded, that has not been done very often. And the fact that it not only has been done, but it has been done well and is a success, I think, is whatever changes they made or whatever choices they made in adapting it, I think, are working. And as of now, it has this massive anticipation and massive pre-bookings and all of that. So people are really excited about it. And it's not just book readers; it's general audiences are really getting into this story.
Yeah. I feel like one thing that you said there about it feeling alien and feeling out there, I feel like that was one thing that I absolutely loved about it, that it was like it like completely embraced that side of things and didn't try to be like too normal in sort of what it was doing. Also, if I can add, that this was shot amazingly. Like some of the visuals in this sort of in this movie are absolutely fantastic. And another thing that I personally really enjoyed out of the movie as well, just to add to what Daniel was saying, was just like the political intrigue of it. Of sort of, you've got the emperor that looks like it's doing sort of the Atreus family a favor by gifting them this sort of Acarus. Is it called Acarus? Is it called Acarus? The planet? No, the planet, the one.
Arrakis.
Arrakis, sorry, yeah. That he's like, gives to them Arrakis, but secretly he's like plotting for the sort of the family to be destroyed and stuff like that. Just like the little like game playing, the sort of political sort of manipulation in there was like also fantastic, which I really enjoyed. And I'm like looking forward to seeing how that then sort of continues to play out in the next movie as well.
Okay, well, I think we've established that Dune is a good adaptation. Now, for people like me, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people like me, what would you say? Because I want to watch it again. So, what would you say to people who haven't seen it, or people who are going to see it again? Because yeah, so what would you say to us to look out for when watching this film? Because I'm sure even people who haven't seen Dune 2 are going to end up watching Dune 1, and they, like I said, they might have the same opinion as me. They're just, a good film, but they just don't understand why it's a masterpiece. So, what would you say to us that we should look out for when watching this film that we might have missed? To kind of spot the nuances, pretty much.
You might have to watch it twice or more to really get it, because it's not just complex, it also doesn't hold your hand very much, but it gives you all the tools. Like, it gives you all the tools to understand what's going on, but you might need more than one attempt to really get it, because it is so complex and it is so weird. It's a science fiction novel from the 60s, which means it was written in a very different context, very different frame of mind. But if you put in the work, the reward is getting an accessible version of this excellent story. That's one of the greats in the genre.
Okay. Cool. Okay. Well,
and also, the more effort you put in, the more rewarding it is, and the more sense it makes.
Okay.
I will be rewatching it again as well, actually.
Yeah, definitely. I will be rewatching it again. But okay, guys. Well, look, man. I think we've established that it's a good adaptation, and even though, I'm not as hyped as everyone else about the second film, even though I am looking forward to it. Yeah, I think this was a very good discussion, and I will be taking what you guys said into consideration when I watch the second film, and I will look at it from a different lens. I will try and look at it from a different lens because I do agree. It does seem like a very complex film, and you have to kind of like stay awake, 24. Like you can't. I don't think there's gonna be a moment where you can just kind of like check your phone, and then. So yeah. Thank you Netflix for acquiring Netflix the catalog, but yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know if anyone's got anything else to say. But yeah, well, it doesn't look like it. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's topic, Monday's topic. We'll be watching. Yeah, we'll definitely be watching Dune 2 next. Definitely have check out for the main discussion for that one. That's going to be interesting. And yeah, man. Hervé, do you wanna?
Yeah, I mean, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
And okay. And all right, guys, thank you. We'll see you next time. Au revoir.